Let's do a new project.
And let go of the bad. And one thing everyone remembers fondly is their first time behind the wheel of a BMW. So come join me and BMW this summer as we explore pop culture moments and topics you just can't stop thinking about on Baby, This is Kiki Palmer. Sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
What do I got? No, I want...
Hello, and welcome back to What Went Wrong. This is, of course, your favorite podcast that just so happens to be about movies and how nearly impossible it is to make any of them, let alone a good one. And my understanding is that we have a real whopper for us today. So, Chris, I'm ready to get Shrek'd. How are you doing?
Yeah, that is actually a verb that will come up in this podcast today.
How could it not?
Took a few days off from streaming.
I'm very excited to be discussing.
My whole family came down with a little bit of a cold last couple days.
Shrek. Before we begin,
So I had to recover from that.
had you ever seen this film before? I would have
But we're
to
back.
imagine yes.
We're back today.
What
We're
were your
back
thoughts
today.
upon watching it, and what were your thoughts upon rewatching it?
Obviously, yes.
I'll try and get
I
the
have
rough
seen
cut
Shrek
done
before.
this week of the
As a
music
child
video,
of the late 80s, early 90s, I feel that
as
this
well
is
as
a
finish
seminal
our script
film,
for
for many of us.
Cyberpunk.
And I loved it then. I loved it now. It's definitely one of these sort of magical movies that kids can enjoy that is equally as funny for parents, and honestly feels geared towards parents. Like, this doesn't really feel like it's for kids, which is great. The only thing that I will say upon rewatching this time is that I was very grossed out by the amount of earwax and bodily fluids that happened in the first act. Otherwise, chef's kiss, but didn't love it.
Well, that's probably the most lore-accurate component of the film.
All right, so let's go here. Display capture.
We're the same age, and you're
Do that.
6 months younger than me, but
So here's the shot we're doing. We'll bring up the shot we're doing.
Like you, I was about 12 when Shrek dropped, and I vividly remember thinking,
Something like
I am
that.
too old to go to an animated fairy tale movie at age 12. I really thought, I have graduated, I have watched Rated R consistently now for a couple of
So
years,
let's see.
and whatever this Shrek thing is for children. And I went into the movie with a terrible
We'll do
attitude, and I
burlesque.
absolutely lost my mind. I thought it was maybe the greatest movie I'd ever seen.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, by the time Princess Fiona does the Matrix riff, like with the Merry Men, I was screaming and jumping in my seat with excitement. I liked it more than anyone out of my entire family.
Wait a second, they're the same guy.
And I really enjoyed it upon rewatching it as well, and researching it has only deepened my adoration for this film.
Do you know what else it deepened my adoration for? Smash Mouth. How could it not?
Yes, which we will get
Maybe.
we will get to, and that's a very interesting part of this journey. The whole Shrek soundtrack is really remarkable.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I listened to the soundtrack
Me
in
too.
the early 2000s. It's great. There are a couple of songs in there that we will get to, because there are a couple songs on the soundtrack that either don't appear in the film or it's a different version in the film.
Yes, we noticed a big one, so I will wait until we get there. But I had
Right,
a
so this
weird
clip is gonna be
moment
short.
where we heard the song in the movie, and I was like, "This is not what I remembered."
A little Mandela effect.
Yes.
Yeah, we will get there. All right.
A lot of these guys look very similar, so this will be chill.
2 brief points of housekeeping. First of all, this is a 2-part episode, folks. Shrek is an incredibly well-explored film, and there is an absolute plethora of information available online and in book form. We have done our best to condense all of it into 2 tight episodes. Of course, if you are interested in learning
That's long
more
enough.
about Shrek upon completing this podcast, I would highly recommend The Men Who Would Be King by Nicole Laporte on the rise and fall of DreamWorks, Disney War by James B. Stewart on the political intrigue and high-stakes corporate warfare inside and out Disney during the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, making tunes inside the most popular animated TV shows and movies by Alan Newman, as well as, of course, incredible retrospectives by The Ringer, Empire, Entertainment Weekly, Rolling Stone.
Oh, there's so many differences in lighting. Look at that.
Great interviews I found as well.
Whatever.
All right, let's talk about the details. Shrek is a computer-animated fantasy comedy. It was released on May 18th, 2001
There you
by
go, that looks
DreamWorks
natural.
Pictures. It was directed by Andrew Adamson and Vicky Jensen, written by Ted Elliott, Terry Rossio, Joe
Let's go
Stillman,
here.
and Roger Shulman, and based on the children's book, Shrek, written and illustrated by William Steig. Produced by Jeffrey Katzenberg, most notably, the film stars Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, and John Lithgow. And as always, here is the IMDb logline for the film. A mean lord exiles fairy tale creatures to the swamp of a grumpy ogre who must go on a quest and rescue a princess for the lord in order to get his...
I don't know, maybe
Spot on.
it'd be nice to get that flag in here, honestly.
Better.
Little eminent domain, little BLM land dispute,
Yeah.
Bureau of Land Management, not the other BLM. Yeah, it's a good tight log line. I think the movie is very
We'll see.
simple.
Let's see here.
Rewatching it, it's a really nice tight 90 minutes,
Yes.
which I appreciated.
I did not even remember the actual plot of this movie. I think because it's not particularly important as a kid when you're watching it.
Exactly. It's a very out and back fetch quest that uses that as an opportunity to skewer anything and everything along its way. All right, Lizzie, Shrek, much like its titular hero, is a movie that many underestimated, including, as we'll discuss, its very creators, to a certain extent. This is a Hollywood fable, complete with a quest for revenge,
Feather that
the
bad
death
boy.
of a beloved giant, and a true fairy tale ending. This is Shrek. Once upon a time, there was a jester of a man named William Steig. His parents, Jewish immigrants from a land now known as Ukraine, had crossed a continent and ocean to ensure that young William would be born and bred in Brooklyn,
might
New York
try
in
to-
the year 1907.
Yeah, I think I might have to do
Raised by
that.
socialists,
Remove this.
parents, in fact, his father was a man after
Golly.
Lloyd Dobler's heart of Say Anything. Steig went into the arts because, as he later said, his father believed that you were being exploited if you worked a regular or ordinary kind of job, and if you were the boss, you were exploiting others.
True.
So the idea was to go into the arts. When my brother Henry declared that he wanted to be a dentist, we just laughed him out of it. End quote.
Oh no.
So,
That's stable dental income.
as a result, the Steig family didn't have a lot of money, and the Great Depression hit, and so William sold a cartoon to the New Yorker in 1930, trying to support his family through his art. Turns out
Alright.
he had a penchant for cartoons. Over the next 70 years, the vaunted magazine published more than 1,500 of his drawings. His art graced
It's not too
over
bad.
100 of their covers. Young Steig was a wizard with a pen and had an utterly unconventional style and tone. He was a master of dark comedy and irreverence.
Let's see
And of
here.
course, much of his material was therefore too dark to print, and so he also took on advertising work to make ends meet because he did have one vice, marriage. William Steig was married 4
how long
times,
is that? I
and
don't
he
know
paid a
where that puts me
sizable
at.
amount of alimony as a result. He was a purist,
Do,
though,
do, do,
and
do,
he hated
do, do,
ads,
do,
so
do.
in the late 60s, when he was well into
Do,
old
do, do,
age,
do, do,
he
do,
began
do.
writing and illustrating children's books.
This
So
is
he
like my
began
new
in the
favorite
60s when he
podcast,
began
these
doing children's
behind the
books.
scenes of how these
He founded
movies
Beacon's
came to
World
be.
with stories renowned for enthralling parents and children.
So while editing,
Lizzie?
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna learn how
Many
Shrek
viewers describe his
came to
books as,
be.
quote, silly and sweet,
While editing
quote,
essentially
quote,
Iron
simple,
Man,
but they are
we're gonna
also
learn about
unexpected,
Shrek.
strange and sometimes scary. Beauty and dread coexist.
Pretty much same
There is
characters.
whimsy, even silliness, but also palpable anxiety, peril, and despair in Steig's world, or maybe this is just the real world. End quote. By his 80th birthday, he was a prolific and award-winning children's book author.
Alright,
In
so
fact,
let's
two of
do
his books
this.
have been adapted into short
Let's do
films.
this.
Abel's Island,
So
a
I
short story
need-
about a mouse stranded on an island, which won the Newbery Award, and was
CO967.
adapted into a short featuring the voice of Tim Curry
As a mouse?
as a mouse,
I would love to see that.
and Dr. DeSoto about a mouse dentist who must help a fox
Okay,
with
so
his
this can
toothpaste without
actually-
being eaten.
Oh.
Again, Newbery Honor, National Book Award, and the short was nominated for an Oscar. So, in 1990, when Steig was 83 years old, Farr, Straus, and Giroux published a book
I mean, in
that,
theory,
unbeknownst to anyone, would
this could.
change Hollywood forever. Shrek! Exclamation point. That's the official title. Derived
extend
from
all the
the
way
Yiddish
out there,
word for
but-
fear or terror, was a slight 30-page book celebrating an ugly.
They're all wearing Yeezys, of course.
Lizzie, I'd love to read you the first page.
All the
Great.
9 rings or whatever they're
And his
called.
father was ugly. But Shrek was uglier than the two of them put together. By the time he toddled, Shrek could spit flame a full 99 yards and vent smoke from either ear. With just a look, he cowed the reptiles in the swamp. Any snake dumb enough to bite him instantly got convulsions and died. This page features a very ugly Shrek standing next to a convulsing snake while he's smiling.
Nice.
Let's see
So,
here.
The story is very straightforward. Shrek gets kicked out of the swamp by his parents.
I'm gonna turn
who
the mic
basically
down a
like,
little
Go
bit.
make something of yourself. He meets a witch who's like, holy moly.
Yeah.
Sweet Jesus. So gross. She then reads him a poem where she says, you'll meet a donkey, defeat a knight, and rescue a princess. And he goes, princess, that sounds great. He goes on his journey. He grosses some people out. He has a nightmare where he's being hugged by children.
Sounds right for me. Yep.
Yeah, meets a donkey who can speak. They go to a castle. He defeats a knight. And then it turns out the princess is actually even uglier than he is. And he says, I love it. And they get married and have ugly children. And
Aw.
that is the entire story. It's very simple. And it's not something that necessarily screams feature film. It would be about 15 minutes long in this form. But Lizzie, what's the one rule of Hollywood?
Settings.
Anything can be a movie.
Yeah, if it's IP,
Yeah.
you got to go for it. Several online sources, including Vice and Empire, claim
see
that it
what
was
you
actually
create.
Steven Spielberg who first optioned Shrek in 1991 by way of his since defunct animation arm, Amblimation.
Yep.
According to these sources, he saw the film as a cell animated, meaning 2D animated feature film that would star Bill Murray as Shrek.
Nope.
All right. And how about one Steve Martin as Donkey?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll
there we
green
go.
light that part.
Green light that one. This is entirely
I forget
possible,
it is. How do I
but
write it?
none of the articles that listed this information contain a primary source.
There we go.
So take that with a hefty grain of salt. What we do know is that Shrek made its way to the people who would make it, not via the hustling of agents or machinations of publishers, but rather through its intended audience, children. So producer John H. Williams, not the composer John Williams, first met Shrek through his sons. The boys absolutely adored this foul-mouthed creature and the tales of his exploits. His nose is so gross that lightning and thunder have a conversation about how nasty it is while they're raining on him.
In what way? Like boils?
Yeah, it's like it's referred to as his hot knob, which is pretty gross in the book. Yeah, no, it's definitely his nose.
Okay.
Anywho, convinced that there was something to this utterly bizarre anti-fairy tale that seemed to stick its nose up at the very idea of sanitizing stories for children, a la Walt Disney, Williams brought the book into work with him one day in 1994. It was there in the newly minted offices of DreamWorks Pictures that he showed the thin tome to fellow producer Laurie McDonald, who then suggested that he pitch the book to their boss, Jeffrey Katzenberg, as an animated film. And lucky for John H. Williams, the only person who hated Disney more than Shrek and William Steig was Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Oh, yeah, baby. He hates it.
So in the early 1990s, New York transplant Jeffrey Katzenberg, a diminutive but extremely tenacious and savvy Hollywood operator, found himself on the losing side of a regime change. We'll cover Katzenberg's early years in more detail when we get to Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but suffice it to say, his rise to power was quite meteoric, beginning his journey as a lowly assistant, a page boy, one might say, to producer David Picker in 1974. Katzenberg had climbed the ranks inside of Paramount Pictures, eventually securing the position of president of production under studio head Michael Eisner.
Ruh-roh.
Katzenberg followed Eisner to Disney in 1984, when Eisner became the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. As described in an incredible, excruciating, and hilarious detail in James B. Stewart's Disney War, a book I highly recommend, the Mouse House was a viper's nest in the 90s, far more Game of Thrones than The Happiest Place on Earth. And there were those within the company who felt that Katzenberg had taken far too much credit, both internally and publicly, for the success of Disney Animation's unexpected renaissance in the late 80s and early 90s. We discussed this briefly in our Emperor's New Groove episode.
Let's try this.
Yeah, we're talking Little Mermaid and then sort of culminating in The Lion King, right?
Exactly. Now, to Katzenberg's credit, he'd inherited the least successful studio in Hollywood in 1984, and by the early 90s, achieved box office dominance by way of, as you mentioned, Lizzie, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, not to mention The Great Mouse Detective, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and the yet-to-be-released Lion King, which would come out in 1994.
That's quite a lineup.
It's an incredible lineup. Further, Beauty and
I
the
think it
Beast had
works
been the
fine.
first animated film to
works
be
fine.
nominated for Best Picture,
Wow.
That works fine
and
as well.
Katzenberg had been the one to broker a deal between
Wow,
Disney
all
and
at once
Pixar
we
to be
have
the
a deal.
distributor for the animation studio's
Whoa.
first film, Toy Story.
Which
Damn.
do you like? Which do you like?
On the other
Which do you
hand,
like? I like that
Katzenberg
one.
was
That's the
reportedly a
first one.
detail-oriented tyrant with an extremely heavy hand who knew little, at least initially, about the
Red-
art of
wait, red
animation.
flag?
His management style might be described as micro. Pun. According to a Hollywood Reporter article by entertainment journalist Kim Masters, Katzenberg had been angling for a promotion. Specifically, he wanted to be president, the number 2 position under Eisner at the company, a role then occupied by Frank Wells, who Eisner was close with. Frank Wells was
Incandescent light.
also the more prestigious and pedigreed of the two. He went to Stanford Law School. I don't believe Katzenberg finished college. In October of 1983, while walking
Incandescent?
together in Aspen, Katzenberg claims that Eisner told him, quote, "If for any reason Frank is not here, you are the number 2 person and I want you to have the job," end quote. Presumably, Eisner thought, Frank's not going anywhere. Unfortunately, tragedy struck and Frank Wells died in a helicopter crash 6 months later on April 3rd, 1994 in Nevada. Katzenberg
No.
waited for the call of succession the following morning, apparently sitting at his phone at 6 a.m.
Okay, a little fast, but all right.
Yep. Only to receive a midday memo from Eisner to the whole company that he would take on
Closer.
Wells's responsibilities himself and he was not naming a replacement.
Whoa.
This
All right, let's
article,
keep
by the
trying.
way,
Let's
you
just
guys
keep trying to see
have
if we
to
get
read
it.
it. Kim Masters, The Epic Disney Blow-Up of 1994. It is salacious. Katzenberg lasted another 6 months, but to make a long story short, in August of 1994, he was fired from Disney, and to add insult to injury, Eisner refused to pay out a roughly $120 million bonus that Katzenberg believed he was contractually owed.
I feel like the courts later said he was contractually owed that.
Yeah, we'll get to that battle. So after 10 years in the Mouse House, Katzenberg found himself
it's so
exiled
close.
from the Magic Kingdom,
closer.
betrayed by his mentor, and ready to burn the whole thing down. But he couldn't do it alone.
Let's save that.
There's no better feeling than getting a
Let's
great
save
deal
that.
when you're shopping. Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. We're talking fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Ulta, Petco, and Zappos pay Rakuten to send them shoppers, and Rakuten then passes on part of that payment to its members as cash back. Cash back is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or Rakuten can send you a check. You can
This is
even
supposedly
maximize
like
your
the
savings
new-
by stacking
new,
cash back on
image
top of
generator
other
thing.
deals like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It's a no-brainer. Membership is free and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cashback really adds up.
The robots have gotten pretty good at what they do, but they can't pour passion into what they make or give an item a human touch. On Etsy, you can find something handmade, handpicked, or designed by independent sellers who pull from their unique experiences and bring their whole hearts to their small shops. Shops that prove when you do what you love, you can help others find things that bring more joy to their lives. Discover hand-blown glassware,
last one.
reclaimed furniture,
Closer
personalized
than-
jewelry, hand-picked vintage pieces, custom designed artwork, and so much
What do
more.
you call
The
these
fingerprints
farm
Etsy
life
sellers
things?
leave behind reveal who they are. human beings determined to make human connections. So the next time you're shopping for yourself or someone special, choose extraordinary items, handmade, handpicked, or designed by small businesses. Keep commerce human. Discover small businesses on Etsy.
Summer is supposed to be an opportunity to slow down. But when you look at your kids, you can't help but notice that your kids are growing up fast. Help them build independence as they grow with Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app for families where parents can keep an eye on kids' money habits while kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely. It's the easy, convenient way to raise financially smart kids. Get your first month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/Wondery. That's greenlight.com/Wondery.
8 days after being fired from Disney, Katzenberg approached Steven Spielberg and music mogul, and also his mentor, David Geffen, with a risky proposition. Let's form a new house of production power, a movie studio that the three of us would own with our respective strengths. Geffen music, Spielberg live action, Katzenberg
Let's keep
animation.
going. Get these back.
It was a bold concept, one that was sure to rankle the feathers of the established players, and I highly recommend the book, as I mentioned, The Men Who Would Be King. For more on the intrigue surrounding the formation of this company, DreamWorks, SKG, and of course, Lizzie, what does SKG stand for?
Spielberg, Katzenberg, Geffen.
Bingo.
A+ for me.
Let's put all of our names on it. What went wrong? LDC. We'll go into more detail on the studio's roots when we cover either The Prince of Egypt or Ants. However, most crucial to our tale is Katzenberg's focus at this new venture, animation.
What else we can get?
Not only
I
was
don't know, that's what
Katzenberg
it usually
suing Disney for breach of contract, determined to claw back that $100+ million that they owed him, he began poaching Disney animators left and right, offering, quote, mid-six-figure salaries and long contracts, end quote. Katzenberg was so bullish on DreamWorks Animation's prospects, he'd reportedly told potential investors that the studio's animated movies would generate at least 80% of what The Lion King had, which was nearly $2 billion at that point across theatrical, home video, and ancillary markets. He was able to, as a result, raise $2 billion in investment funds.
You know, Chris, you got to have faith in yourself, and Jeffrey had that in spades.
He consistently has had that in spades, sometimes to incredible effect.
Yeah, sometimes it's quibby, but, you know, sometimes you got to spend many billions of dollars to find out that people don't want short movies.
What's funny is there was actually a predecessor, Pop.com. I'm not going to go into it here. We'll, I think, discuss it more when we talk DreamWorks, but it was not a dissimilar concept to Quibi at the birth of the internet around the year 2000 that also similarly flopped quite quickly. Anyway, Katzenberg's bid to disrupt the hierarchy of animated feature films was placed on the shoulders of a noble champion, and that movie was The Prince of Egypt.
I love that movie.
It's a beautiful...
It's really gorgeous. Yeah.
I will always remember the shot where they're crossing the Red Sea.
Yes.
And lightning strikes behind the wall of water and you see the whale in silhouette.
Yeah.
Just, it's really an incredible film. We will cover it. The 2D animated adaptation of the Book of Exodus reflected Katzenberg's dream to tell stories with universal themes that appealed to, again, Lizzie, adults and children alike. Katzenberg later claimed the story had been with him since his days at Disney, though I also read it was Spielberg who pitched the idea. Either way, DreamWorks had its A movie, a prestigious biblical epic. So when John H. Williams pitched Shrek, he was really going out on a limb. How would the story of a flame-belching ogre who finds the ugliest princess on, quote, the surface of planet Earth fit in with Katzenberg's vision for mature, universal stories aimed at all ages?
We should be doing at the same time.
Well, maybe it wouldn't have to, at least not at first. So Katzenberg liked Shrek, and he saw in Shrek the chance to do something different, to develop a B movie at the studio, a dark and edgy film that utilized experimental animation and featured a contained cast of no more than 17 characters.
Whoops.
We need to get
There's more than that, right?
videos.
Maybe not, I guess.
No, there are. We'll talk final cast list. Yeah. I will say the final
shots.
film is more contained than it seems. Most of it is actually just 2 or 3 characters walking, but there are certainly more than 17 characters. The mandate from Katzenberg was clear. The Prince of Egypt was the studio's darling, but $20 million was going to be allocated to Shrek, which is way less than half of the typical animation budget at the time.
And then
it was an unconventional gambit and would require an unconventional approach, so Katzenberg reached out to a young order of newly minted wizards with the hope that they could provide the magic he believed his film so desperately needed. Lizzie, we've talked about this young man before, and I was a bit surprised to see him show up today. And that is future Lost co-creator J.J. Abrams.
What?
So in the mid-1990s, Abrams was a recent Sarah Lawrence College graduate who, along with 3 other alumni, Lauren Somon, Andy Weisler, and future Goosebumps and Shark Tale director Rob Letterman, formed a computer animation collective affectionately called the Propellerheads. I read that Abrams was more the business guy in the crew since he was already repped or had a relationship with Michael Ovitz, and Lauren Somon was the primary animator. The Propellerheads had been experimenting with a new form of 3D animation called motion capture. So a few years ahead of Lord of the Rings and Andy Serkis, Katzenberg was shown a short test they'd made called American Voyeur, which featured a cigar-smoking, piggish host of a smarmy celebrity talk show moving about. You can see at least part of it on YouTube. And it is shockingly fluid for the time. So Toy Story, for example, used plastic rigid toys to get around having to do things like, showing skin flexing and fat moving and muscle rippling, etc. This kind of tackled all of those problems head on to relatively impressive effect for the time.
What year are we right now?
1994, 95.
Oh, wow. That's a lot earlier than I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So John H. Williams brings Shrek in 94.
Okay.
Katzenberg, I believe, is meeting with Abrams at the top of 1995. And I think this short was around the same time. So Katzenberg brings the Propellerheads in-house to work on a motion capture Shrek demo, partnering them with a small group of DreamWorks artists assigned to the film. The Propellerheads are over the moon. They went from sneaking into USC after hours to use their equipment to being paid by Katzenberg and being given access to the most expensive computer animation equipment that you could possibly buy overnight. The mood around DreamWorks was much more muted. Barry Jackson, Shrek's first production designer, recalled in a 2023 interview that he was brought into a room with a group of 20 or so other artists. Remember, these are mostly people who Katzenberg had poached from Disney or Amblimation with the promise of high salaries, long contracts, and movies like The Prince of Egypt. And he pulls out William Steig's Shrek.
Yeah.
And he tells them the vision. It's got to be dark, edgy, and you have no money. Suffice it to say, not everybody wanted the gig. There were people who walked out. One animator apparently later said, quote, Shrek was essentially the story of the ugliest guy in the world who meets the ugliest woman in the world to get together and have the ugliest children.
I don't understand what the problem is. That sounds like a hit. Why would you not greenlight it off of that?
I know you're being facetious, but I do think now it actually, I think now it makes sense. But at the time, when Disney has just released The Lion King, which is a retelling of Hamlet, and it's become the most successful animated film of all time.
Right.
The idea of doing the opposite of that is probably fairly terrifying. And this was also a relatively prestigious profession at this point with the Disney Renaissance. I mean, these were true artists making a really breathtaking art form, and the idea of doing fart jokes probably didn't appeal to folks.
True. I will say, I think one of the most incredible things about this movie, rewatching it, is the way it depicts Princess Fiona and the message that it sends to little girls.
We'll jump back on stream here.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's in there at this point.
It was not.
It's not. Okay.
No. So that's the other. So a lot of its more progressive qualities just weren't in the original book because it didn't really have much of a plot.
Exciting.
Sure, it's a children's book.
Yeah,